You're listening to a podcast of spurious morality.
Whether you like it or not. Hello and welcome to a podcast of spurious morality. I'm Johnstone, and with me this week I have Jimmy.
Hello.
And I have Greg.
Hello, friends.
And we've reached a stage of season by season where things are about to get a lot more colourful. We're concluding season 21, so as we begin, Tegan has left the TARDIS. We did Resurrection of the Daleks last time, and we sort of had a bit of a chat about her departure. And now we're moving into Planet of Fire. So our TARDIS team now is the Fifth Doctor and Turlough. And every single story we're going to discuss today has a totally different TARDIS team to the previous one. It's absolutely bonkers. Like, it's one thing that really does fascinate me about season 21 is not only does it end with a completely different set of regulars than it starts with, it's almost like musical chairs in terms of who's in each serial. So, like I say, we were pretty steady with the team of the Fifth Doctor, Tegan and Turlough for the first few stories we discussed, the ones we did in part one. But now moving to this, it's incredibly inconsistent, and maybe we'll have a discussion later about whether this works or not. It's certainly an interesting decision to, have the new Doctor in the last story and all that kind of thing. But maybe I'm getting slightly ahead of myself because, as I say, it's Planet of Fire that we're going to discuss now. I am a big fan of this one. I really like this story. I think it was one of the first ever Fifth Doctor stories I saw, which, helps. Sort of the nostalgia factor, Little Johnstone liked it, that kind of thing. But it does interesting things that classic Doctor Who doesn't really do. Like, Mordred Undead established an awful lot about Turlough and left us with quite a few mysteries. And here we are now, and that pays off. Like, a whole season later, we're actually getting the conclusion of a character arc for a companion. It's virtually unheard of. So let's jump in and let's discuss Planet of Fire. Do you want to go first, Jimmy?
Yeah, excellent. It's definitely better than I'd remembered in past, because I hadn't rewatched it in a while before I did it again for this podcast, and it's definitely way better than I remembered. It's really good that it gives Turlough so much to do and resolves all his backstory and that, and I think it really does a good job by him for his last story. What it doesn't do so well is I think the introduction of Perry is not handled that great. The way they hint at things that got expanded in the EU about Howard in a nightmare scene is pretty interesting, but I don't think it's played very well. I think Perry improves a lot in the next story, in the Caves of Anjazani, but here I think the introduction was not very well written and not very well acted, unfortunately. But at least we got Perry out of it. I think she improves over her tenure, but the first story wasn't necessarily good for me, apart from the line about, well, I'm Perp Gillian Brown and I can shout just as loud as you can. That was good. That was a nice character moment. And the Tiny Master was also a really great cliffhanger, and I think it's also interesting that they took so long and they decided they would bring Chameleon back. I mean, it's like it really highlights how badly he worked, like the complete lack of movement and so on, and the Doctor having to execute him in the end, and basically trying to execute the Master with the fire. It's very dark, and I think they handled that part very well. Although the line about your own is, yeah, like it's interesting that they were hinting at that, but it doesn't really work for me. But the thing that does work for me in this story is the whole theme of the religious indoctrination and brainwashing, and this whole culture that's evolved to basically follow the exiles and rebels from another planet. I think they did a good job with the world building of that religion and stuff. I think that worked fairly well. So yeah, it's odd. It's like, I think most of what I've just said has been more complaints and disappointments, but overall I did actually enjoy it, despite what it sounds like.
I think it perhaps gets lost among all the really good stories it's around. Like, we really enjoyed The Awakening, we really enjoyed Frontios, we enjoyed Resurrection. Obviously, Caves of Androzani comes next. This, like, I do genuinely think that in most of the seasons, this is a contender for best story, but it's in just such a really good season that it maybe gets lost a little bit. I think that like the Master stuff's really good. It's a good Master story, actually. It again does something interesting with the Master. It doesn't just have him sort of hanging around and cackling as so many Davison Master stories do. He's sort of proactive, isn't he? He's on a mission here. This isn't just let's do some weird stuff or let's pretend we're the monk for a couple of weeks. This is genuinely like the Master is in crisis and he's trying to get out of it. Yeah, the use of Chameleon's good. They do the right thing with Chameleon, which is barely have the robot prop on screen and instead have an actor kind of playing someone that Chameleon has turned into. It's the way they should have done it all along. So yeah, it kind of it gets things right. It's a good sort of conclusion for Turlo. It's a good kind of conclusion for Chameleon as well, I think, and all the indoctrination stuff is really, really well played. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty strong story, all told. It's definitely one of those stories where they just keep layering in new and new things to raise the stakes, which is a very common thing in the 80s, which you didn't really get in previous eras. Like, this starts with Chameleon being in trouble, and then it escalates to the Master, and there's a new companion, and yeah, I mean, it keeps itself motivated, I suppose you could say. Like, it keeps itself moving forward, propelled, and I think that works really well. I like the story here about the Master, like you said. I think it's a good story for the Master. It's obviously the Master is going to come back no matter what happens, but it's kind of pitched as a final encounter, at least between the Fifth Doctor and the Master, who have had several encounters, and it ties into the theme of the season of the Doctor being a feckless, weak character that can't deal with the horrors of the universe, as he stands helplessly at the end and does nothing as he watches his oldest friend and enemy burn to death in front of him. All he can do with Chameleon is just kill him. Like, it's pretty downbeat. I agree with Jimmy. Like, this isn't a great introduction for Perry. I mean, I like that they show her being, proactive and willing to solve her own problems, but she still gets reduced to like screaming companion a little bit too much. But I mean, and then this is a great story for Turlo. Like, I think Turlo as a companion is one that just never got the treatment that he deserved. Like, the original Black Guardian trilogy, they do a lot with Turlo, and then as soon as that's over, they just have no idea what to do with him. And he spends a good chunk of the remaining stories either captured or in the TARDIS. I mean, even in the Five Doctors, he spends the whole story locked in the, well, not in the TARDIS, And so yeah, it doesn't. It was never. It was clear they didn't know what to do with him, and at least in this story, they're finally, after a little bit of hinting in Frontios, they're really expanding on his backstory now. They're actually giving him character development, and naturally, once they've finally done this, that's when he leaves. But I love his goodbye scene. It's very understated, but yeah, he really does get into the most terrible trouble. That's great. Yeah, it's overall this is a good story. It's good. It's good, solid Doctor Who. There's a lot going on, a lot of good characters, relationships. It's not perfect, like you said. If it was another season, it would be one of the best of the season. But here it's in the middle of the pack, and that's okay.
It does what it needs to do. Its main job is to sort of get rid of who's in the TARDIS, sort of the three stories: Resurrection, Planet, and Caves. Like, the job is to empty out the TARDIS and start again. And okay, Caves is excellent. Like, there's no sort of doubt about that. And we kind of talked about how we liked what Resurrection did with Tegan. I do think this works. I do think that it is a very sort of Fifth Doctor way of losing a companion. Actually, what you were sort of saying about how he just kind of stands there, watches the Master burn, and has no choice but to essentially kill Chameleon. I guess one thing worth sort of comparing is, like, we're counting Chameleon as a companion for the sake of this conversation because, he travelled in the TARDIS and the intent was certainly there, let's face it. This is the second companion to die on the Fifth Doctor's watch, and while I agree that it's nothing like as tragic as Adric, it's kind of underplayed a little bit. But then again, the story's busy, it's doing other things, it hasn't got time to go, oh, I really loved that shape-shifting robot who we had loads of off-screen adventures with, honest. I think it's probably the best possible outcome for Chameleon. I can't see how they could have done the character better with sort of everything that happened and, the circumstances around it. So yeah, it does its job, and it does its job well. And I do think Turlough is sort of missed. I kind of wish Turlough had stuck around and sort of spent a bit of time with the Sixth Doctor, even if it had just sort of been there for the transition and cleared off. I don't know, new governor at the end of Vengeance on Varos, something like that could have worked, I guess. Is there anything else anybody would like to add about Turlough before we move on?
Yeah, I don't think there's much to say. I mean, he was an interesting character. It was interesting to start with a character who sort of started out as a villain and gradually changed, and even by the end, he's still a bit dodgy. But I think it worked well. It's not the sort of companion you want to have all the time, but he worked well for the time he was there. Yeah.
Okay then, well that's Planet of Fire done, that is Turlough departed, that is Perry joining the TARDIS. And we'll talk more about Perry sort of over the next couple of season by seasons. Obviously, like, Perry's just kind of being moved into place at this point, really. Yeah, it's a decent enough intro. So we have this wonderful, brave, exciting new TARDIS team of the Fifth Doctor and Perry. We've got perhaps what Peter Davison needed all along, which is just him and a single companion. It worked really, really well for that one episode of Arc of Infinity, and we've finally got it now, and I'm looking forward to an extensive series of adventures. Oh no, it's Caves of Androzani, and the Fifth Doctor's going to die now. Okay. So Caves, it's... What is there to say about Caves? Because it's just good, isn't it? Like, it's just one of those absolutely wonderful and actually quite rare events in Doctor Who where everything just comes together really, really nicely. Like, Robert Holmes comes back to Doctor Who after quite a break and delivers certainly one of his best scripts, if not his best script. We've got Graham Harper directing, somebody who's been involved with the series for a long time but has never directed before, certainly officially directed. We know he had quite a bit to do on Seeds, but it all works. Like, Davison's absolutely on fire. He gives it absolutely everything in his final performance. Perry, Nicola Bryant's a bit more confident here and actually has a little bit more to do, certainly for the first half of the story. I seem to remember she spends the second half unconscious. And then we've got some very sort of wonderful and interesting characters, again, all fantastically played. There's a real atmosphere to this one, like the scenes of sort of Sharaz Jek delivering his little soliloquies in his bass. They work so well, and same with Morgus as well in his office. And this is just a story that looks good, sounds good, is good. Everyone's great in it, and it's a really exciting story to watch. Like, I remember when I first saw this, and actually it was probably one of the later classic stories that I saw. I don't know why I didn't get to it for quite a long time. And that part one cliffhanger, wow. Like, okay, there's a tiny little hint for half a frame that suggests this may not be the real Doctor and Perry, but unless you're watching really, really, really closely, that's the Doctor and Perry executed by a firing squad. What a cliffhanger. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really, really well done. Shame it's ruined by the whole loud noises create camera distortion lines thing, but otherwise amazing. And then I remember watching, it was part 4, and it's the bit where the Doctor escapes from the spaceship and they sort of go after him and they're chasing him over the sand dunes and shooting at him. And it's just brilliant. It's really, really intense, gripping Doctor Who. And honestly, we've not really seen anything like this before, and I don't think we've seen anything like this since. This is just a desperate Doctor fighting to survive, fighting to save his friend who may or may not be somebody he doesn't know very well, depending on your point of view of Big Finish and all that kind of thing. Fifth Doctor and Perry, did they have a ton of adventures and another companion along for the ride as well, or is this straight after Planet of Fire? A debate that will pointlessly rage on forever. But it's just great. Like, Peter Davison getting to just act so intensely just makes for something absolutely wonderful. Like, he's not my favourite Doctor. I made no secret about this. I don't particularly get on with the Fifth Doctor. I don't dislike the Fifth Doctor. I don't dislike any Doctor. But watching stories like Frontios and watching this, it makes me wish we had got a 4th season out of Davison, because we could have had Androzani as is, but he could have not regenerated at the end, and it could have hardened him a little bit, and we could have had this intense Doctor for a season. I don't know, something like that. It's a big what if, but really one worth considering, because Davison is just so bloody good here. So I've witted on about Caves enough. I think it's excellent. I think it is a pinnacle of Doctor Who. Maybe not the pinnacle, but a pinnacle. So I'm going to pass over to Jimmy. Go ahead.
Yeah, what is there to say? That I absolutely love it. It's such a brilliant story and such a great way for Davison to leave, and a brilliant highlight for his performance. It's just amazing. And regarding the Perry thing about the gap, I've got to say, I've never understood why people complain, like, okay, she's wearing the same thing as Planet of Fire, but like, have you never worn clothes more than once in your life? Like, nope, I've worn this, I'm throwing it in the bin instead of the washing basket. Like, come on. She's allowed to wear the same clothes. There is a gap, especially the way the Doctor's talking about her like a friend rather than like someone he's just met. So anyway,
I mean, look at outfits in season 19. It's there's
Yeah,
obviously
exactly.
gaps in there, and they're wearing the same thing every single story.
Yeah. So the other things I've got to say, they really do a good job of the Doctor and Perry's dynamic, like especially the scene where they're being interrogated and the general's like, "You've got to call me sir," and they each add the sirs at the end of each other's sentence. It's brilliant. I love their dynamic, even though they didn't get to stay together long on screen. I think they really worked well as a team, and I love them in the audios together with Erimem until they butchered Erimem's characterization in her last few stories. But we'll talk about that if I'm ever on an episode about her. Yeah, the first cliffhanger was excellent with the execution. I think they really did that one well. And again, the third cliffhanger with Davison's performances, he's talking about how he's not going to the end in Perry and he's got to save her. It's brilliant. It's just such a shame that the episode 2 cliffhanger is the magma monster, which is like one of the few faults with an otherwise brilliant story. I mean, we could have had a story where every cliffhanger was amazing. That would have been wow. What else? Also, you've got to love the darkness in the story and some of the funniness, like particularly with Morgus and the president, the confrontation between them where the president's like, oh yes, you're going to ship these workers you've fired off to your slave camps. And Morgus is just like, I never thought of that. And then the line about give them a minute of silence for the people who, oh, no, wait, make that half a minute, like brilliantly dark. And again, the bit where Morgus kills the president and then to his minion who deposes him at the end, he's like, oh yes, an order the lift workers shot. Like, it's such a dark story and it's so brilliant. And you've also got to love when that minion takes over at the end and she's called Morgus and she's just absolutely outing him on all the stuff he's done and like, oh yeah, and I got rid of your secret bank accounts. I've taken over. I'm in charge now. Bye-bye. It's just brilliant. And my favourite thing is when Jack's dying, after all the, he's been a horrible person the whole story and like Perry's scared of him and that, but just in his dying moments, the last thing he wants is to be held. I thought that was really poignant and tragic, and I think they really played that well. So yeah, it's a brilliant story. I think the only faults are minor things, like I think there's first the magma monster, obviously, and then there is one cheesy line about, oh, every cloud has a strontium lining, and it's just, come on. And other than that, it's all production things, like when Perry bounces out after she falls in the Spectrox nest, or when the doctor, you can blatantly see how reversed the shots are when he's going for the milk because the question marks are backwards and the mud stains are on the wrong side of his jacket. It's a bit of a shame the story that's so brilliant script-wise, like, has so many of those little things. I wonder if they'll do a fix or anything as a alternative for on this for on the collection when it comes out. So, but yeah, I really love this story, and I think it's a shame that it wasn't realised slightly better in that regards. But even with those few minor faults, it's an absolute highlight of the Davison era, and probably one of the best stories of the 80s.
Very difficult to disagree with that last part, indeed. What about you, Greg?
I mean, what can you say about this one? This is, if it's not the best story of classic Who, it's in the top 5. I mean, there's just there's no reasonable way to argue against that. Every part of this comes together and works in a way that you rarely see in this show. The script is absolutely phenomenal. The the counterplay between Jack and the Doctor is fantastic. Like, Morgus is an amazing character. The fact that he does these little Shakespearean asides to camera is just so like surprising that you'd see that kind of invention on screen. And the plot here is more complicated than your normal Doctor Who story would be. Like, the whole, like, the Doctor's execution or lack thereof is what basically drives the rest of the story, insofar as it appears that the Doctor and Perry have been killed, but when Shellac realizes that they're androids, he doesn't tell anyone because he would be embarrassed to say that Jack got away with his prisoners. So that means that Morgus thinks that the Doctor and Perry are dead. So later on, when he sees that they're not, he comes to the conclusion that Shellac must have lied to him, which is true, but he thinks he's lied to him because he's working on behalf of the president, not because he's embarrassed. And so that leads to him killing the president, and the whole thing falls apart. And like, no, that's not Tom Stoppard or something. I mean, it's not super complicated, but it's like, it's for Doctor Who, like, that is a level of like complexity that we rarely see. I mean, the acting in this is absolutely phenomenal, like top to bottom. Everyone is great. Peter Davison, this is easily his best performance in the role. He's so intense. He's still got, you know, the sarcastic side to him, like the scene where he's like mocking Jack. Oh, he can go on nature walks, have picnics, and jolly evenings around the campfire is funny. And his relationship with Perry is great because he's still that kind of irritable, sarcastic character, but he's no longer with Tegan, who he had like a relationship where they were very much like giving it to each other. Whereas here it's a much more friendly, I suppose you'd say, relationship with Perry, and it comes off really well. Nicola Bryant is fantastic in this, like her like sheer terror, like every time Jack like touches her, is you can almost feel that. And then Christopher Gable as Jack is what can you say? I mean, I basically all I'm doing here is just listing things off and saying that was great. But the star of this episode, though, for me is Graham Harper, and the direction here is on a level that we never have seen before and never see again, even in his other story, Revelation of the Daleks. Like, this is using like BBC studio cameras to an extent that I didn't know was possible. Like, the shots are all like so carefully blocked, but not just to account for moving the camera around the room, but for actually framing shots and getting characters in places that emphasize the themes of what's happening. The the filmed segments are absolutely amazing. Like the action sequence in the episode 4 where the doctor's, you know, sprinting through the sand dunes and, you know, the bullets are kicking up the sand around him. Like, that looks like it could have come out of a movie. Like that's like just straight up excellent gripping direction. The sound, the music is so good. Like, and then we put all of this together, and we then end with an amazing regeneration scene. And we even the story, as great as it is, it's still very much in keeping with the themes of the season too, where, like, if you think about it, like in this story, you know, like I said, like the fake execution is what sets the whole thing in motion. But like, nothing the doctor does here really matters that much, like, to the plot. You know, like, it's basically he and Perry land on this planet. They get embroiled in a local affair, as happens in so many Doctor Who stories, and it quickly becomes apparent that like everyone here is terrible. There's no good guys, there's no bad guys, there's just various degrees of amoral monsters, and there's no winning. Like, who do you ally yourself with? Like, there's nobody. And so it just becomes a question of, this is a terrible situation, we don't belong in it, we have to get out of here. And then of course they get poisoned and they're dying, and so now it just becomes like, I need to save my friend and I need to leave. And he finally accomplishes those things, but in the process it kills him. Like, he can't even have just a nice little excursion to a planet with his new companion, or long-term companion again. No, he's just going to die. And it's mentioned a lot, but like, you know, his last word, you know, being Adric is meaningful. And I love the regeneration. I love Anthony Ainley just cackling over the end of it. And yeah, and then Colin Baker appears, and man, like, here we are, we're ready to go. And, you know, oh boy, I bet this next episode's going to be great.
Davison, he got a great ear. It's there's lots of stuff that's not so good, but I think with his era, I think the good stuff outnumbers the bad. Like, there's problems, there's failings, but overall, on the whole, it's a good era, and he was brilliant in the role, and it's great that we still get him these days with Big Finish and such. So yeah, but there's not really much else you can say, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. As I said before, I'm not a big fan of the Fifth Doctor, but I actually think it's more the Fifth Doctor's era, and I think that none of these problems I have are actually anything to do with Peter Davison. I think he's great. I think he's a great Doctor, and there's some incredible Big Finish stuff. I mean, there's some incredible TV stuff. There's Earthshot, there's Caves, there's Mordrin Undead, Frontios. Really, really good Doctor Who stories. But I just sort of think that maybe he was let down a little bit. I know that we had the JNT year with Tom Baker, and I know we had season 18, but that was just Tom Baker being Tom Baker, carrying on and doing the extra year, and there was a big handover with JNT, and Barry Letts was involved, and I can see why season 18 went so well, and then it started to go downhill a bit with 19, and I think the Fifth Doctor's era kind of gets hit quite badly with that. The musical chair script editors in season 19, that is not how you want to start your new Doctor's era, particularly after 7 years of Tom Baker. You do not want 3 different script editors in more or less as many weeks. I think Saywood brings some stability when he eventually sort of gets settled in, but I think that it's not quite the stability that the Doctor or JNT or Doctor Who or anything really needed. And I think that's kind of the problem. Like any issues I have with the Fifth Doctor's era, and even the character of the Fifth Doctor, none of it's down to Davison whatsoever. And overall, I'm really glad he gets to go out on a high. I'm glad he gets to go out on such a damn good story. Like, I don't think we're ever going to have a regeneration story as good as Caves of Androzani again. I don't think there is a regeneration story as good as Caves of Androzani. Personally, I prefer Legopolis. I think Legopolis is an excellent story, but I can take that step back. I can look at Caves and go, no, this is a genuine accomplishment. And I think that Caves kind of, not just Caves, I think chunks of season 21 in particular give us sort of a vision of what this era maybe should have been. I think Frontios, some moments of Planet of Fire and Caves really sort of give you the proper Fifth Doctor era. I forgot to mention it when we were talking about Planet of Fire, but I think one of my favourite Fifth Doctor moments is when Turlough's been sort of cagey about his childhood and his brother and all that kind of thing, and the Doctor just turns around to him and goes, you know what, if you're withholding any information from me that helps the Master, we're done. That's it. Our friendship has ended. And I think he just kind of, when you consider the weight behind that, everything that happened with Adric and the fact that they've more or less just lost Tegan again, depending on how big of a gap you think there is. Big Finish. He's obviously still peed off about it. He is at the beginning of the story. He's sulking. And yeah, just the weight behind that conversation and kind of what it means. And then, of course, Turlough leaves later on anyway, but under good terms. But yeah, I think it's a great Fifth Doctor moment where he just goes, you know what, I've had enough. You've tried to kill me once already, that kind of thing. So yeah, Davison was fantastic. The Fifth Doctor's fantastic. I just think he was perhaps let down a little bit by those around him. Anything you want to add, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically my view on the Davison era. Like, I mean, if you listen to Peter Davison himself talk about it, I mean, he'll say, like, he talked to Patrick, the possibly apocryphal story of talking to Patrick Troutman being advised to get out after 3 years, and so he decided to do that. But then when he did his 3rd year, it's like, oh, now they've finally figured out how to write this character, and I like it now, and no, I've made a mistake. And that's really what it is. Like, they didn't, so much of this era of Doctor Who is just not knowing what to do with certain characters, right? They had too many, companions for all of the writers to deal with at the start of the Davison era, like, which normally came at Nissa's expense. Then they bring Turlough in and they never know what to do with him. And they spend 2 years not really knowing what to do with the Fifth Doctor. And that's a shame because Remember, too, in season 19, you are coming off of 12 straight seasons with a Doctor who is a star. And I don't mean like in terms of the actor's profile. I mean like when John Pertwee is on screen, you're looking at John Pertwee. When Tom Baker is on screen, you're looking at Tom Baker. Like they are the center of attention. They are the star of the show. I think Peter Davison is a better actor than either of them, honestly, but he's not that kind of commanding screen presence. And so when you have, him as your new Doctor, like people are naturally going to see him as kind of like, oh, what's the deal with this guy? Like, where's my, mighty, supernova of a Doctor? And when you combine it with scripts and stories that don't really even know what to do with his character, like it's a struggle. And it's I'm happy that they figured it out for season 21. I wish they'd had that energy throughout his run, because I think we could look back on him. If we had 3 seasons of the season 21 Fifth Doctor, we would look back on him as one of the greatest Doctors, as opposed to, the kind of transitional figure that he became.
And I suppose one irony is, obviously we're going to move on to Colin Baker, Twin Dilemma, and so on now, and they immediately know what they want to do with the Sixth Doctor. Now, I'm not saying that they made a great decision, and I'm not saying it's executed very well, but Colin Baker has often said in interviews, like, he knew how he was going to play it, and he had a plan for playing it for years and years, and how that character was going to adjust over that time. And you do see it. We don't get as much Sixth Doctor on TV as we should have done. We know what happened there, but the Sixth Doctor in season 23 is very different to the Sixth Doctor in season 22. Again, to be discussed in a future Spodcast. But there wasn't that with the Fifth Doctor. With the Fifth Doctor, it was very much turn up on set of Fall to Doomsday and just see what happens. And that was it. All very strange. So yeah, they do go in with a plan with the Sixth Doctor, and we see that plan begin to unfold in the Twin Dilemma, which is the concluding story of season 21, and therefore we are obliged to discuss it. I do apologise, gentlemen. So how do you go from probably the best Doctor Who story there's ever been to probably the worst Doctor Who story there's ever been in a week? How does that happen? How on earth does a production team complete the Caves of Androzani and then go, okay, Twin Dilemma? How does that happen? I'm aware that sort of TV production in the 80s wasn't particularly smooth, but at the end of the day, it's the same producer, it's the same script editor. You've got one of the same regulars. Okay, this is only Nicola Bryant's third story, but Perry doesn't come off too great in this story either. He kind of gets overshadowed because of that absolutely stupid scene of the Sixth Doctor attacking her. But Perry's character just goes to pot in this. Anything we have done, anything we built up over the previous two, just gets thrown out. And sort of Nicola Bryant spends pretty much the majority of the next season and a half just trying to rebuild the damage that this story does. I don't think it's Nicola Bryant's fault. I will very hastily add, she's fantastic, and she must have been so excited to become the new Doctor Who companion, and then she must have seen some of the scripts that got put in front of her and gone, what the hell am I, like the Twin Dilemma, what's that? Time Lash, what the hell's going on? But she somehow just sort of powers through it all. So a lot of respect to Nicola Bryant, but Perry as a character really does start to go downhill in this one. The new Doctor is grumpy. The new Doctor is unlikable. He's loud. He's shouty. He is everything Peter Davison wasn't. We spend way too much time just messing about in the TARDIS. Like that, there is no need for any of this. And meanwhile, there's just some really uninteresting stuff with two non-actor twins where they get kidnapped and we couldn't care less. And okay, we've got, I can't remember the actor's name now, which is really bad, but it's the guy that played Garman in Genesis of the Daleks. Like, he was good in that. He actually does a fairly good job in this as well, but oh no, he's out of the whole story by the end of the first episode. There's, on paper, I can see this one having its moments. I can see this one being okay. And there are certainly a series of set pieces in this story that could work, but for a plethora of reasons, they do not. I think very little Doctor Who is entirely irredeemable, but I really struggle to not place this on that list. I'm done. I'm done talking about Twin Dilemma. I've got better things to do with my life than talk about the Twin Dilemma, so I'm going to let Jimmy talk about it instead.
Oh gosh, what can I say? It's absolutely terrible.
I've got the sweary bleepy sensory sound effect at the ready.
No, it's so awful. The one positive thing I can say is that the new title sequence for the Sixth Doctor, going for that more over the top and vibrant look and sort of jazzing it up a bit and making it even more 80s. The title sequence works for the new Doctor. That's about the one positive thing I can say. Other than that, it's just terrible from start to finish. I mean, I think they could have almost salvaged it if, instead of all the other stuff, if Six had the initial smugness and vanity and such, sure, that's fine. But adding all the being scared of everything and going mad and trying to kill Perry, and then when she's happy he's survived and he's like, oh, well, you shouldn't be because I'm an asshole. And it's like, oh, God, what are you doing? It's just terrible. Like, they could have maybe salvaged it if when he learns that he strangled her, and instead of being, he's like, oh, well, I've got to repent and I'm going to be a hermit and you're going to be my disciple. And it's like, maybe you could have salvaged it if he was like horrified by what he'd done and humble and needed to change. But no, it's like the characterization is just terrible. Like, I really don't know how they even could have thought that this was going to work. Like, how could they not realize how terrible this was and how much it was going to hamper the new Doctor? Because, I mean, it might have even been less bad if it was the first story of a new season, and so the next week you've already got him being a bit more normal and a bit better. But you end the season with this, and the new season's not coming along for ages, and this is what people are left with in their heads of this is the new Doctor. It's so ridiculously stupid and just such a horrible mistake. I really don't understand how they even could have thought that this might work. It's just absolutely terrible.
Any advance on absolutely terrible, Greg?
I think that's a perfect summary of the story. I also have no explanation for how this happened, how you can go from making something so good to this. I mean, I don't know. I know she'll never probably like, crap on the show, but I would love to ask Nicola Bryant, like, did you notice, like, between filming the one and the other that something had gone dreadfully wrong? I'm just curious because, like, oh my God, it's so bad. It I I swear to you, I watched all 4 episodes of this story and I paid attention, and I can't tell you what the plot is. I don't know what Mestor was doing with those kids. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, nothing about it matters. Like, oh, there's another guy who's a Time Lord. Oh, and the Doctor knows him, and then they don't do anything with that. And it's like, oh, okay, sure, that's a detail, I guess. Um, you know, I've talked quite a bit last episode and this one about how, season 21 is all about like establishing that the fifth Doctor is not a good fit for the universe as Eric Sayward sees it, and now we're going to get a new Doctor who is going to be a fit for that universe. And since Sayward sees the universe as this nihilistic, uncaring place, we need to have a Doctor that is similarly unemotional and amoral and ready to make the tough decisions. And they decide to illustrate this by having him strangle his companion for no reason. Like it's so, like, I mean, on the one hand, like, everything about the new Doctor is just tacky. Like, he's loud, he's obnoxious. Like, his costume is. I mean, I know we've all gotten used to it over the decades, but it's a disgrace. Like, it's supposed to be awful. Like, Perry even says, like, this is, why would you wear this? What's wrong with you? It's just, everything about him is designed to be off-putting. And then they put in these scenes with, like, I, this is affording it more seriousness than it deserves, but like I wouldn't even say domestic violence undertones, just straight up domestic violence. What is he doing, strangling Perry? Why would you do that? What on earth makes you think that's a good move? Like, everything about this story is designed to get the audience hating this Doctor and saying, like, this is a bad guy. And then they think that at the end they're going to make up for it by having him say, oh, well, you may find as time goes on that I'm more agreeable than you thought. And then he looks right at the camera and he's like, I am the Doctor, whether you like it or not. It's like, hey, audience, you don't like this guy, huh? You. Like, it's so bad. It's so stupid. And, like, I don't blame Colin Baker. Like, he plays the part as written. He plays it well, but, like, there is nothing to like here. I like the Sixth Doctor, like, in general. I do not like him in this story. This is the least likable, least appealing. This is, like, if there's one thing you can rely on in Doctor Who, it's that you like the Doctor, and you don't hear it, and it's designed so that you don't. And yeah, I mean, I have a hard time coming up with what is a worse Doctor Who story than this for that reason. It is absolutely terrible.
And absolutely baffling after they made the sort of very clear choice of, we're going to give the new Doctor a story in season 21. Like, just have Caves as the last story, and like, it wasn't necessary. Like,
right. I mean, if you go from the end of this into, like, a week later, you've got a new story, like, and you can show that, okay, see, here's this Doctor, he's not quite as bad as all that. But instead, you have to wait the entire, like, what is it, 9 months between seasons at that point? Like, why?
Yeah, it's absolutely baffling. Like, they made that deliberate decision, okay, let's showcase the new Doctor for 4 episodes at the end of the new season. I can see it working. Like, I can see there being a logic there. It's, okay, totally different situation, but, we had Hartnell regenerate into Troughton mid-season, more or less. Yes, 60s TV was different, blah, blah, blah. But at least showcase a character people are going to want to come back for. At least showcase a new Doctor that people are going to sort of go, oh yeah, he was cool. I can't wait to see what he gets up to next. Like, I can't imagine watching Twin Dilemma and having any level of excitement for what comes next based on it. Like, when we saw the sort of 15, 20 minutes of Shooty Gatwa at the end of The Giggle, I couldn't wait to see more. I couldn't wait for Christmas. It was only a few weeks, but I really couldn't wait for Church on Ruby Road, because he was just introduced so damn well in that 15 minutes. And then this does not do that. We get 90 minutes of the Sixth Doctor, and he's just the most unlikable character that has ever appeared in Doctor Who. Like, the Doctor has battled some very, very horrible people. None of them are as horrible as the Sixth Doctor in this story. Play with regeneration trauma. It's a pretty cool concept, and play with the idea of having to adapt to being a new person. And obviously, Sayward has been very, very heavily pushing the whole Fifth Doctor's a little bit ineffectual thing. So really play up basically what they did with the War Doctor. Like, I've deliberately turned myself into a bastard because the universe needs to sort itself out, and I'm going to sort it. But there's none of that. There's just, I've regenerated, it's not gone very well, and I'm just using it as a bit of an excuse to be an arsehole. And that's all it is. To coin a phrase, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Like, what were they thinking? What was the thought process that brought about the Sixth Doctor's characterization in the Twin Dilemma? And then you've got that coupled with the fact that the story is just crap. Like, take away the fact that the Sixth Doctor's really unlikable. The story's dreadful anyway. It looks terrible. It's a proper budget's run out at the end of the season type thing. There's a base on a moon that is made out of tinfoil. The walls are literally tinfoil. Awful. Absolutely god awful. And I need to stop now. That's it. We've done it. We've completed season 21, and it was cracking up until Caves, with the exception of Warriors of the Deep, of course. How bizarre that a really, really, really strong series is bookended by two of the shoddiest examples of Doctor Who in existence. It makes no sense to me. Like, everything. It just doesn't make sense. But at least we have got The Awakening, Frontios, Resurrection, Planet of Fire and Caves, because they're all really, really top-notch Doctor Who, and I don't want to end this on a negative note. So, yeah, thank God they exist. They're all great. Thank God Davison got an amazing final season for the most part. Thank God he got to play the Doctor he wanted to be, and they figured out what they were doing with the Fifth Doctor far too late in the day, but at least they did. So let's leave it on that more positive note. So we will be tackling season 22 next, which I'm looking forward to. Like, I don't think season 22 deserves its, I think it's fair to say, generally negative reputation. So I'm looking forward to kind of revisiting it, because I think there's an awful lot to enjoy in there. But that's all we've got time for. That was the second half of season 21, and it's, as ever, been a lot of fun to do a season by season. So I will say a thank you and a goodbye to Greg.
Thank you and goodbye.
And I will say a thank you and goodbye to Jimmy.
Thanks. See ya.
And we're going to take a short break from Spodcasting, but we will be back with more in the spring. Goodbye now.